Welcome back. Hopefully you've already watched my previous videos on Akilah Obviously's copyright infringement case against Sargon of Akkad. Specifically, in the last video, we looked at Akilah's argument that Sargon's juice was commercial in nature. In this video, we're going to approach the commercial question from the opposite direction. The fourth factor in a fair use case is the effect of the use upon the potential market for or value of the copyrighted work. In other words, did Sargon's use take money away from Akilah or prevent her from earning future profits? This element is actually pretty damning against Akilah. In Harper and Roe v. Nation Enterprises, the Supreme Court stated, "This factor is undoubtedly the single most important element of fair use." In Amsinck v. Columbia Pictures Industries, the district court pointed out that while the other three factors may lean toward the plaintiff, their significance in this case is outweighed by this most important factor. Because this key factor all but requires a finding of fair use, defendants will be entitled to a finding of fair use unless all the other factors weigh strongly against such a finding. In other words, Akilah must prove that Sargon's video had a negative effect on the marketability of her original video. If she fails to do this, the bar required for Sargon to prove the other three factors becomes drastically lower. There are a few ways that Akilah can prove this claim. In copyright law, there is the right to first publication, in which the copyright holder gets to determine when and where their work is first published. As we laid out in the video on the nature of the copyrighted work, this was clearly not violated because Akilah uploaded her video to YouTube first. Akilah could also choose to charge for access to her work, and therefore Sargon's dissemination of her work would prevent her from gaining these profits. Here again, Akilah chose not to do this. Her work is available for free on YouTube to anyone that wishes to view it. Akilah could also choose to license her work to other creators. However, in this case, Sargon's video could not have done any more harm to her doing so than her original video did. Here it's important to point out the clarification that the Supreme Court made in Campbell v. Acuff. The role of the courts is to distinguish between biting criticism that merely suppresses demand and copyright infringement which usurps it. We will look in a later video at whether or not Sargon's video constitutes satire or criticism, but it's important to note here that any negative effect that Sargon's video may have had on Akilah's ability to license her work due to how his video presented her arguments is irrelevant to the question of marketability. Again, since Akilah had already freely disseminated her work on YouTube, Sargon's sharing could have done no greater damage to her ability to license it. However, in On Davis v. The Gap, the Second Circuit did make the case that a plaintiff can argue actual damages for the infringer's failure to pay a licensing fee to use the content. In other words, Akilah could argue that Sargon should have paid her a licensing fee in order to use her content. Firstly, failure to get a license did not apply when using the work for criticisms, as the Supreme Court made clear also in Campbell. They stated, "This distinction between potentially remedial displacement and unremedial disparagement is reflected in the rule that there is no protectable derivative market for criticism. The unlikelihood that creators of imaginative works will license critical reviews or lampoons of their own productions removes such uses from the very notion of a potential licensing market." Again, we'll look at whether Sargon's video constitutes criticism in a later video. But even if you don't accept that argument, in order to make this claim, Akilah has to prove that such a license has a fair market value. She has to prove that somebody else has or would pay her to license her content that she freely put on YouTube to use on another YouTube channel. As far as I know, nobody on YouTube does this, and at the very least, it is an obscure practice, so I doubt that she could prove that argument. The final way that Akilah could prove damages is in a loss of advertising revenue on YouTube. This is the point where the whole argument about Sargon's video having a negative impact on the potential value of her video falls apart. In her complaint, Akilah alleges that the copyrighted work was on its way to becoming one of Hughes's most popular videos, and that she suffered irreparable harm and substantial detriment, leaving Hughes without adequate remedies at law. Akilah seems to be trying to make the case that somehow she lost views on YouTube because of Sargon's video, but she completely fails to make any connection between the two. If we look at Akilah's list of most recent videos on Social Blade, we can clearly see that her video is actually one of her more popular videos in the past year. and it is one of her most commented on videos of the last year. Looking through the comments, we can see why this is the case. Many of the comments are left by people that are clearly Sargon's target audience, coming to comment on her video likely after watching Sargon's. This is also demonstrated by the fact that she has turned off viewing the number of likes and dislikes on this video, which she tends to do on controversial videos that gain notoriety among her opponents, which in turn draws a large number of detractors to her video. This therefore becomes a case of all press is good press. YouTube advertising doesn't care if the people watching your video agree with your political position or disagree with it. All it cares about is, did they view your video? If they did, then you get paid. Which means in this case, Sargon's video actually had a positive effect and not a negative effect on Akilah's profitability and the market value of her video. Specifically, in Nunez v. Carribean International News Corporation, the First Circuit Court of Appeals found that because the only discernible effect of the publication was to increase demand for the photograph, or in this case video, and because any potential market for resale directly to the newspaper, or in this case YouTubers, was unlikely to be developed, this factor favors a finding of fair use. Reiterating the Supreme Court's position that I mentioned in the beginning of this video, this factor is undoubtedly the single most important element of fair use. Given that Akilah uploaded the original video freely to YouTube and the only discernible effect of Sargon's video was to bring attention to and drive traffic to her original video, this gives Sargon an extremely strong case for fair use. That being said, what do you think? Do you think this could be the deciding factor in the case? Is it sufficient to convince you of Sargon's fair use? Feel free to let me know in the comments. However, even if you think this is enough to make Sargon's case, as I said in my introduction to fair use, all four factors must be considered. We still need to address the factor most people are concerned about, the transformative nature of the work. First, though, there is one more factor in the fair use test that is directly relevant to the question of the transformative nature of the work. That is the amount and substantiality of the portion used. I'll cover that in the next video. Finally, as I've said in my previous videos, this is a brand new channel, and that means these videos making the legal case for Sargon aren't going to show up in anybody's feed. Obviously, Sargon can't comment on this case too much for legal reasons, and there's a lot of bad information out there that's damaging his reputation. If you think I make a good argument and want to help spread the word, click the subscribe button and share these videos on social media. Thanks for all your help.